I've got here a sample of the new Guerlain release, Pêche Mirage, in the L'Art et Métier collection. This is one I didn't have very high hopes for. The theme of peach and fruity fragrances in general isn't really my wheelhouse, but when I read that it's combined with leather, I got interested. I thought this could actually be very nice, very intriguing. I've worn it as my scent of the day today, and I also sprayed some on last night. This is also my second time making this video because I felt like I wasn't very well spoken the first time. So I'm thoroughly saturated in Pêche Mirage by this point. So we'll start with the intro. One reason I think I struggled in the previous video is there's just not all that much to say about it. It's pretty simple and kind of does what it says. The opening, we'll spray a fresh spritz right there. You do get a hint of leather with a very realistic, juicy peach smell. The peach here, it smells fresh, it smells really watery. I think she did a really great job of creating that sense of juiciness. The leather here is quite subtle, but it is recognizable. It's a very smooth, refined, kind of like a light tan suede leather, which makes sense because they're kind of playing on the like leathery texture of a peach's outside. And then it's also combined with some osmanthus, which also is a smart bridge, as osmanthus has elements that are peachy and also leathery at the same time. So I think the major issue with this one is of genre, and it brings up a larger question. Should some genres just not be this expensive? Fruity perfumes are nice, as well as citrus. I appreciate a well done fresh citrus cologne, but they're kind of meant to be fleeting, pleasant little pick-me-up notes. And should something of that genre ever cost $425? I think yes and no. I think if you're gonna put them in this high-end exclusive line, it needs to do something really interesting or really special compared to normal versions. The potential pitfall is when you're charging that much, you might want to extend the note for a lot longer, give people longevity, give them some more body. And sometimes that can actually kind of ruin the smell. Whereas if you just let the peach be a quick burst of enjoyable peach for like $100 and then nothing, kind of die an honorable death, that can be better than extending it with sort of boring or nasty or typical musks in the base. So what does this do? I will say it's the best peach fragrance I've smelled, but I don't think I've smelled many other than the Tom Ford. To me, the Tom Ford has a nice realistic opening, but very quickly falls apart into just kind of bland nothingness in the base. I will say this extends the peach for a pretty impressively long time in the base. Again, it's kind of a pitfall of the genre. This fruity, musky, fresh, watery smell often evokes the idea of shampoo or sort of fruity shower gels, and it does go down that territory. I will say they did a good job of making it smell a little bit more sophisticated than that, but again, it's dangerous territory at such a high price point. If I had a knock against it, I do wish that leather stuck around longer. I think the leather could be the saving grace in terms of keeping it a little bit more interesting, a little bit more full-bodied. And again, it's not that we can't have nice, fun, flirty, fresh fragrances, but at this price point, it really needs to do something interesting. And I think it should be more niche. You could make the argument as well that they're trying to be mass appealing. They want to make sales. And of course, that's true. Every company is trying to sell fragrances. But at this high price point, I think there should be a niche appeal and the fragrance should feel special. To me, this and a lot of recent fresh Art et Métier releases under Delphine Yelk smell like they could have been fantastic Aqua Allegoria fragrances. I'm talking about Jasmine Bonheur and Neroli Plein Sud and this, but they kind of don't make any sense to me in the Art et Métier line. So peach, very juicy, a little bit sweet, thankfully not honeyed at all. There's been honey in a lot of notes, a reference to the Guerlain bee motif. I'm really happy they left the honey out of this one. Peach as a fruit is kind of sweet enough all on its own, but it has a very natural sweetness. I've had this sort of like peach flavored drink. It reminds me a little bit of that. And again, that gets in this territory of I'm sure there's no like expensive peach tincture that's at work here. So it's kind of like a food flavorant that, again, smells somewhat cheap. Another interesting observation is I got to smell this way in advance, but frustratingly, I only got to smell the dry down, as I have a friend who works at a department store and got on skin a spray of this like a couple months ahead when employees only had kind of a secret vial, but I wasn't able to smell the beginning. And the first thing I said was, wait, that smells like Floral Bloom. The same friend wears Floral Bloom Forte. I'm not a huge fan of that fragrance either, but to me, the dry down is very, very similar. It's almost like Yelk has created this kind of long lasting, since it's the Forte version, fruity floral base, and she riffed on it here. I will say in comparison, this does smell a little bit more refined, a little bit more expensive. There's something a little bit gnarly and nasty in that Floral Bloom Forte base that I really don't like, almost a little bit scratchy and harsh. Again, to that idea of trying to overextend what could have been a good idea and ruining it. So I do like it. There's no way I would pay the retail price for this. I'm not particularly a fan of peach or fruity fragrances. If I can think of what fruity fragrances are good, probably Le Parfum de Thérèse has fruitiness in it. There's Byretto's Pulp, but I never quite liked that either. I found as well there's something a bit harsh about the dry down of that. But so pros, the peach is very realistic smelling. It's not cloying. I do find the dry down long lasting and pleasant in sort of a fresh, musky, peachy, fruity kind of way. It smells just like one notch more refined than a shower gel. But again, it could also remind of kind of those body sprays that are targeted towards like teen and tween girls. It's not far off from that. Of course, it's a few levels more sophisticated, but does that make up for the price difference? I suppose each person will have to decide for themselves. I do think if you love peach fragrances and you're looking for the ultimate peach fragrance, this might be it. And if that's what you want, it may be worth the price to you. So a quick read of the blurb, and I'll see if my impressions match what they say. At first glance, peach appears in voluptuous rounded lines. I would agree with that. It's very hyper realistic. It's very like diffusive and nice and bright and three-dimensional in the opening. Then discovery continues as the vivacity gently rounds out, taking shape with the fruity leathery accents of osmanthus. At the heart of the fragrance, the tension between the fruit and the leather becomes palpable, as sensual as a second skin. That I'm not so sure about. To me, the leather doesn't last long enough to create a tension in the base. And also leather, peach, osmanthus are all things that blend very nicely into each other. So I don't understand the word tension. And I think that's something that's lacks. Again, at this high price point, we want something special. And I think if they did introduce a bit of tension here, it would feel more special. Again, I can see the marketability. If they're aiming for people who want just a fun, fresh, fruity fragrance, having a strong, like characterful, leathery base might turn those people off. Sometimes splitting the difference, you lose an audience on both sides. It's not a good idea. But again, I expect something more special at this price point. So I've noticed they started doing smaller travel sizes. I honestly wouldn't mind having a little bit of this around. I do enjoy it, which coming from me, who's not particularly interested in this style, maybe that's high praise. I can imagine people who do like this style going gaga for it. So I think it's well done. I also think it belongs in the Aqua Allegoria line, and I still wait for Yelk to really make something that feels worthy of the L'Art et Métier, not only price point, but of its legacy that can live up to some of the older fragrances. But if you're a fan of her style, it's definitely, there's a continuity with her fresh fragrances, her treatment of these kind of fresh shampooy musks that I also found in like Jasmine Bonheur. It does feel very light and very happy, and sometimes that's nice. We don't always need things to be heavy and complex. So in that sense, it's very charming in a way. So I think now that's all I have to say about Pêche Mirage. I wish there was more of a Mirage. I wish there was more tension. I wish there was more leather. But for what it is, a straight up fruity osmanthus, juicy, peachy fragrance, it's certainly very well done.